Okay, there you go. Can
Congrats,
you hear me?
Paglinawan.
Okay. First, allow me to thank all of you from Subic, where I am right now, for your attendance in person or virtual. This book, which we are celebrating today, was initially intended to be volunteered to a Manila broadsheet as a survey of overt intelligence provided by the professional media and health publications worldwide. But the medical community's worst scenario developed into a full blown pandemic, necessitating the president to declare in mid March of 2020 an enhanced community quarantine. The person who was supposed to sweet talk the broadsheet for me was locked down and could not close the deal, just as the implications from an international perspective started to morph into something else. Unlike many of you, I did not have to figure out what to do behind closed doors for months. I serialized my discoveries in sovereignph.com, a social news website that I started editing in February of 2020 within a category on health and COVID 19. I chose international news that seemingly flowed a pattern, not knowing where it could take me. Made a content analysis in sovereignph.com of the shortlisted materials, cross referenced it with aged
Article.
sources, finally synthesizing my edits into a logical build-up. But as early as a week into the lockdown, I already developed a journalistic angle I could niche down to direct research. It wasn't hard to determine. Talking at the White House on March 2020, US President Donald Trump crossed out the word corona in his prepared speech and replaced it with Chinese to finally read Chinese virus. Earlier on, his Secretary of State Mike Pompeo had labeled it Wuhan virus. As someone very familiar with American politics, as I have worked as a press attaché of the Philippine Embassy in Washington, D.C. for 7 years and lived in the United States for more than 20 years, I knew what the American president running for re-election was up to. Trump was politicizing the pandemic. Those of you who have read my introduction would find out that in just 3 weeks, American propaganda machine had gone into a full circle, painting the information war with a motive that leads to lawfare. Writing for the Times of Israel, the authors of an article entitled Xi Jinping's China Did This. They were Canadian human rights activists accusing the Chinese government as a corrupt, criminal regime that wasted 40 years blocking information when it crushed domestic dissent and ensured COVID 19 would become a global pandemic. Politicizing the virus leads to an information war that bites into lawfare, a world war using an unseen enemy as a new WMD, quote, weapon of mass destruction, spelled DISTRACTION, distraction, to distract. My instincts were again proven right. The infodemics were moving at a get go to preempt the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. This is why I referenced back to history and showed how in 1918, the United States escaped the consequences of the world's first great pandemic, the Spanish flu. And now that it had passed a century, we now know that the H1N1
Dali.
virus originated in Kansas and
Oh,
spread by the US Army onto Europe. There were no
ang
qualms
sabi.
about wittingly or unwittingly exposing the agenda of the West. Blame China as the genesis of the pandemic and make it pay for global indemnifications. Well, history repeats itself, but instead of moving fast forward with the emergence of the internet, It was even easier to access archives moving backwards in time. Check the milestone if you will. December 31, 2019, the first confirmation that the coronavirus has broken out in Wuhan, China as ground zero. A month before, November 2019, testifying in May 2020, the mayor of Belleville, New Jersey, Michael Belcham, said he had tested positive for coronavirus antibodies, adding that he contracted the novel coronavirus in November, over 2 months before the first confirmed case was reported in the US. October 13 to 18, 2019, over 300 American servicemen participated in the World Military Games held of all places in Wuhan, China, with most servicemen billeted in a hotel just a few hundred meters from a seafood market. There were reports of at least 5 of them being hospitalized after many fell ill with some kind of flu. One participant, Maaje Benazri, collapsed in the middle of a 50-mile cycling race and showed some typical symptoms of coronavirus. Maaje was an Army reservist and a NATO diplomatic courier. Her husband, Matt Benazri, was a Fort Detrick employee. Known to be always on the top five of any world competition, the entire US team uncharacteristically ranked 40th, 40, in the team standings. September 2019, biologist Gabriel Sozzi of the Milan National Cancer Institute reported that Italian blood samples taken in Lombardy region showed SARS-CoV-2 virus antibodies. Let us move back faster. August 2019, Fort Detrick was officially closed. July 2019, the Centers for Disease Control issued Fort Detrick a cease and desist order 3 days after it sent a letter of concern. June 30, 2019, an outbreak in the Springfield Village, a retirement community for seniors located in Fairfax, Northern Virginia, USA, hospitalized 54 and caused the death of 3. This is my earliest confirmation of a severe respiratory outbreak datelined in my book, No Vaccine for a Virus Called Racism. Note that since the COVID-19 virus incubates from 10 to 14 days before showing emergency level symptoms, make it totally probable that the milestone here should be about the middle of June 2019 for the first smoking gun within the United States. This is the one that created an impact on me because this facility, the Springfield Village, a retirement community for seniors, is less than a mile from where I stay in the United States when I go home to my family. This means also that none of the more than 300 U.S. servicemen who played in the Wuhan on October 2019 could have contracted the virus in Wuhan. The more plausible explanation is they already had the virus before they entered China's borders. I am, of course, not a virologist or a medical practitioner, but my common sense tells me that the viral transmission that occurred in Wuhan was not a lab leak, nor neither was it an animal to human infection, but a human to human transmission. The seventh Military World Games was the largest military sports event ever to be held in China, within nearly 10,000 athletes from all over 100 countries competing in 27 sports. Oh my gee, what a fastest way to send mail to the rest of the world. Best yet, feigning China as the origin of the pandemic, now that has killed, oh, I have stopped counting a year ago around the planet. My last submission is this video of a congressional hearing held sometime March of last year at Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. Joss, are we ready? After which, I am ready to answer any questions as the moderator would direct. Thank you and good day.
Thank you very much, Ka Paglinawan. And first of all, congratulations for your new book. We'd like to request for you to autograph it for our media friends. Thank you very much for your opening statement. That's Mr. Adolfo Paglinawan, or known as Ka-Ado. Next, we'd like to invite an geopolitics analyst, an intellectual, a nationalist intellectual. His name is Herman, or more known as Kamentong Laurel. I'd like to give a short introduction. A lot of people know him as an idealist. In the 1980s, he came out in the news as a volunteer who headed the Philippine government and United Nations Refugee Processing Center for the Vietnamese refugees in the 1980s. And then he is very known now as a champion, eloquent champion of the Philippines' independent foreign policy, especially championing better Philippines-China understanding and cooperation. He is known for his fair, eloquent, and fearless writings on issues relating to Philippine-China relations, also about China and Asia-Pacific issues for the past 2 decades. He is also a radio host at Radio Pilipinas every morning with Ka-Ado. The title of the show is Ang Maestro, The Unfinished Revolution. He is also host of the GNN, Golden Nations Network, the name of the TV network now, cable TV. He is also columnist and writer, analyst at sovereign.ph and other news and other media sites. But now, more importantly, in the last few years, Kamentong Laurel is the founder and prime mover behind the Philippine BRICS Strategic Studies. It is a think tank concerned with geopolitics and politics. PhilBRICS for short. PhilBRICS Strategic Studies. Let us now invite Mr. Herman Tiu Laurel to give his opening statement on the petition to WHO. Mr. Kamentong Laurel.
Thank you very much for the premier pandesal baker of the country, Wilson Lee Flores. Maraming salamat. Good morning to everyone. Before I start reading some of the parts of the, to save time, only some of the parts of the petition, let me give way first, if with your permission, Wilson, to show the 3-minute video that Ka-Ado has requested to be shown, because this is the congressional hearing where the former head of the US CDC, Center for Disease Control, who just retired around 2-3 months ago, but this was in 2020, this hearing, where he admitted that some of the flu patients posthumously were discovered to be COVID-19 victims in the US. So this, when this Dr. Robert Redfield says and admits that there were COVID-19 victims already prior to the first discovered case in the US, it could stretch back to 2019, December, November, or even earlier. He never came out with the details. Of course, after President Biden changed his tune, because in 2021, January 27, President Biden, who was just inaugurated 5 days earlier, issued an order to all state departments, all state institutions of the United States, not to use the term China virus or Wuhan virus or Kung flu that President Trump had started to use to distract from the crisis in the US, the huge death rates and so on from the COVID-19. Yet, a few months later, Biden again changed his mind and instructed his intelligence agencies to reinvestigate this China virus thing. These are the questions I will answer a little later after this video. Joshua, if you can roll the video. Joshua, is it rolling?
And I applaud all of you for being forthright with the American public. That's exactly what we need. In times like this, communication is so important. And if you're going to err on one side or the other, over communication clearly is more important than under communication. Dr. Kadlik, I had the fortunate opportunity to be with you earlier this week and see firsthand the work that you are doing to help address this issue as well as your peers. I want to talk about one of the slides you shared with me, and it was a bell curve that showed what would happen across the United States as far as the spread of this disease if mitigation efforts were not taken by the American public and your agencies versus mitigation efforts to basically flatten that bell curve. And I think the primary purpose of that is so that our healthcare facilities and physicians, as well as the supplies, are not, for lack of a better term, overrun by a steep bell curve. Am I correct in making that statement?
Yes, sir.
And I think another way to say it, too, it's not a question of if, it's a question of when the virus continues to spread across the United States, but we want to pace it out as long as possible. Is that a correct statement as well?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. One of the issues, too, in helping address this is the fact that we do not have enough test kits. We know that many individuals, as the my fellow member to the right of me, Mr. Raskin, pointed out, there are individuals who have requested test kits and have not been able to access them. My understanding is as late as last Saturday, ground zero in King County, Washington, that the healthcare professionals from that facility still did not have access to test kits. Mr. Redfield, do you know if that is true or not?
We have provided test kits to the health department. The University of Washington has developed their own tests.
Were those test kits available last Friday?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. And without test kits, is it possible that those that have been susceptible to influenza might have been miscategorized as to what they actually had, that it's quite possible that they actually had COVID-19?
The standard practice is the first thing you do is test for influenza. So if they had influenza, they would be positive for
But only if they were tested. So if they weren't tested, we don't know what they had.
Correct.
Okay. And if somebody dies from influenza, are we doing post-mortem testing to see whether it was influenza or whether it was COVID-19?
There is a surveillance system of death from pneumonia that the CDC has. It's not in every city, every state, every hospital.
So we could have people in the United States dying for what appears to be influenza when, in fact, it could be the coronavirus or COVID-19.
Some cases have been actually diagnosed that way in the United States today.
Thank you.
The gentleman from California
So,
is
ayun
recognized
po,
for 5
no?
minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Like all of the members up here, we are getting...
I think that's the whole segment that's important. And so again, what former CDC chair said was that yes, there were cases, much earlier cases, posthumously discovered to be COVID-19 because they only tested for flu before, influenza before, but posthumously some. And many were not tested; they were just assumed to be flu. But now we hear from the CDC chief himself that posthumously some were found to be COVID-19 cases. But it stops at that. They did not pursue any more investigation. So this is the real question. So now I go to formally to the statement that we drafted for the petition for the World Health Organization to open a probe of the Port Detrick biolaboratory. I wrote an article which I will show a little later, where I stated that Fort Detrick is too dangerous to remain a mystery to the world. And of course, there is a long history to this. I will add some images to what Paglinawan has already narrated a while earlier, but let me start formally. Fort Detrick now, and origins of the COVID-19 in countries outside of China. As of several days ago, because I wrote this a bit earlier, August 2nd, the COVID-19 pandemic has infected 198 million in the world, causing 4.2 million deaths, inflicting hundreds of billions of US dollars of economic losses, and bringing irreparable damage or suffering to billions of people. Yet certain countries continue to politicize the virus, engage in vaccine hoarding and profiteering. By the way, Pfizer and Moderna are raising their vaccine prices. The reports are there in the international media. And play around with apartheid or racism, vaccine apartheid or racism. The scientists and experts of the World Health Organization, along with the global scientific community, have been at the forefront of finding answers and solutions to this unprecedented global and historical health challenge to mankind. In February 2021, a WHO multinational team of experts went to China for a 4-week mission after an outbreak of COVID-19 was confirmed in December 31, 2019. The team, led by Danish scientist Dr. Ben Mbarak, was accorded full cooperation by Chinese authorities. Some of the significant conclusions are the following: that the alleged Wuhan lab leak theory was, in direct quotation, extremely unlikely, unquote. And of course, in scientific language, they're always very careful. They're never 100%, but they always include an element of openness to other theories. But to say extremely unlikely is, I think, loaded with a certain direction in the conclusion. There was, quote again, no widespread transmission in Wuhan prior to December 2019, unquote. That's also very important, because as we will see later with reports from international media to support it, there are now reports of earlier transmissions or presence and transmissions in other countries earlier than December 2019. Okay. It also concluded that the most likely pathway, in quotes again, was crossover into human from an intermediary species, but this requires more study, unquote. And letter D, among other conclusions, imported frozen food, in a direct quote again, at Wuhan market was not ruled out, unquote. And it was slated for further investigation. In other words, it is possible that it was imported from the frozen foods that come into the Wuhan market. Now, the New York Times and other international media reported on February 12, 2021, and we quote, the WHO experts pledged to investigate reports that the virus might have been present outside China months before the outbreak in Wuhan, unquote. Dutch virologist Marion Koopman, a top WHO member, said, I'll quote again, we should really go and search for evidence of earlier circulation wherever that is, unquote. So we are just following up on that pledge. But due to politicization, let's be direct, of the US, this is being stopped. Dutch virologist Martin Koopman, I said that already. It is in pursuance of this direction that we, citizens of the Philippines and the world, now demand that the World Health Organization begin the inquiry and investigation into credible and even evident presence of COVID-19 virus as far back as April to November and December 2019. in countries such as the USA, Spain, Italy, France, and even Japan. Okay, so we will start showing some of our images. No? So unlikely that COVID came from Wuhan lab. That is, I did not screen the entire contents. I just took the most convenient images that I could. No? So this is from the Star of Malaysia with the WHO Director General appreciating China's number one, of course, openness in reporting the genetic makeup of the virus as early as January 3 to 10. Exactly which date I do not recall right now. And then let me look at the next image. What is the next image? Okay. So, the presence of the COVID-19 virus, which is evidenced by archived blood serum or municipal sewage samples from these other countries, have been very widely reported in international medical journals and media. So let us go. This image is another one of the experts that was part of the WHO team. Okay, just some reports of the presence of the COVID-19 virus, or at least indications, the antigens in blood samples, archived blood samples, because in blood banks, in hospitals, they collect all these blood samples for further research or reference and so on. So next image, let me look. I cannot see it from my screen because I'm not controlling my screen right now. Okay, this is from Reuters. Coronavirus crisis found in March 2019 sewage sample. A Spanish study shows tests on samples taken between January 2018 and December 2019 and found the presence of the virus genome in one of them collected on March 12, 2019. The levels of SARS-CoV-2 were low but were positive. Research leader Albert Boss was quoted as saying by the university. So we mentioned some of these particulars because there are particular leads that should be pursued already. Next image, if it's ready. What's the next image? Okay. Coronavirus was circulating in Italy. This is from SBS News, but this is available in all the other news sites and sources during that period. Coronavirus was circulating in Italy as early as September 2019. The new study shows Italian researchers' findings published by the INT scientific magazine Tumori journal showed that 11.6% of 959 healthy volunteers enrolled in a lung cancer screening trial between September 2019 and March 2020 had developed coronavirus antibodies well before February. Okay. Next image. What's the next image? Let me see. Okay. Coronavirus is from BBC. France's first known case was in December. A patient treated in a hospital near Paris on 27 December. For suspected pneumonia actually had coronavirus, his doctor said. Dr. Yves Cohen said a swab taken at the time was recently tested and came back positive for COVID-19. This report was May 5, 2020. Is there another image? Okay, this is from Japan. I do not understand the Japanese, but it reports Dr. Fukushima, medical doctor in Tokyo, found frozen serum dated September 24, 2019 COVID-19 IgG antibody tested positive. The next image is a news report from a Chinese from CGTN. False positive of COVID-19 possible in 2019 blood samples in Japan. The Japanese ministry also tested 500 blood donation samples collected from January to March in 2019 in Japan's Kush, I cannot pronounce that, but that region. 2 out of the 5 firms showed positive results, indicating that 2 people were found to be positive, which accounted for 0.4% of the total. That's very low, but it's still a lead, which we say should now be investigated so we understand comprehensively the sources and maybe also discover the earlier character of this virus. Okay, in any other image, I think there's now, Ado Paglinawan referred to the Belleville mayor, Mayor Michael Melcham, who tested positive for COVID-19 in early 2020. But the last time he was sick with flu-like, very severe flu-like symptoms was November, and he was saying that was the only time he was sick. And he is convinced it is the corona virus. You know? And he has not changed his tune after pressures on him. So this is maybe the last image. Is there another one on the? Okay, this is also very significant. From the Times of Israel of April 17, 2020. The headline reads: U.S. alerted Israel, NATO to disease outbreak in China in November 2019. It was not yet even discovered by the Chinese themselves until December 27, when the first report from Xijian of the Wuhan Respiratory Hospital reported the strange flu, the strange illness, and established by January 1st or January 3, that then given a name COVID-19 months later. So how can the US know and NATO know? Or US who alerted Israel and NATO. So these should be looked into. We did not create this. These were reports from the Western and other media. Okay, let me continue. Now, the next site that should be investigated by the WHO should be the U.S. Army Medical Research and Development Command in Fort Detrick, Frederick, Maryland, USA. This biological laboratory suffered a laboratory incident in July of 2019, causing the U.S. CDC, Center for Disease Control, to shut down the facility in August of 2019 due to, quote, serious safety violations, in particular relating to the disposal of dangerous materials, unquote, or a lab leak, in other words, that is believed to have caused the strange and widespread vaping sickness, vaping cigarettes, e-cigarettes, and the strange flu, in quotes, to the U.S. at that time. And there are tons of reports about this strange flu from around July of 2019 up to December of 2019 in Maryland and many other states in the United States. Okay, and so several particular circumstances in the U.S. also demand the highest priority in the WHO origin tracing agenda. And one such case is Mayor Michael Melcham of Belleville, New Jersey. The other, I'll just move on since we mentioned that. Now, the diagnosis of the U.S. Army athletes who joined the Wuhan military games in October of 2019. That is another serious point which Ado Paglinawan mentions in his book also. The Chinese military games, the Wuhan military games, was from October 13 to 18, 2019. And the information on this medical records of those who got sick, and Maetje Benassi, who is married to a military worker in the Fort Detrick, who collapsed in the middle of the 50-mile cycling event. Actually collapsed, and was hospitalized. So contact tracing must be diligently enforced, because since the incubation period of COVID-19 takes about 2 weeks, the logical conclusion is that those athletes from the U.S. Army had contracted the virus way before they entered China, Wuhan, in October, the middle of October 2019. Hence also the time for transmission, which of course the military participants, there were 10,000 participants from so many countries, I think 100 countries. And so they visited the Wuhan market, they visited the other sites and so on. So this really should be looked into. And I think the Chinese government has asked for the medical records of those who were there in the Wuhan military games. Okay, these facts, among many others, make it preposterous for the United States to be pressuring the WHO and its Director General to waste precious time by sending a second mission to Wuhan to investigate. There are no new allegations indicting China any deeper. So why? As in all legal cases, you must need new evidence to reinvestigate. There is no such new evidence. The questions that are lingering are the evident cases or presence before December 2019, before 2020, in the other countries. On the other hand, there are too many serious and credible reports raised by the experts of other countries pointing to COVID-19 incidences in their own territories prior to the discovery of the virus in China as of December 31, 2019. The logical direction is to widen the search net as much as possible to get to the bottom of where patient zero originated. Now that the vaccines are already available, establishing the genetic code of the genesis of COVID-19 will definitely help in determining not only preventive measures but cure. The WHO is racing against time. We, the world, mankind, is racing against time. There is now the Delta variant. There is a Lambda variant. What other variants will come? We therefore affix our marks, our signatures to this appeal, hopeful that in joining millions around the world seeking a common ground to allow science and not politics, and definitely not racism to rule. And so that ends our statement, and I hope everybody is encouraged to sign up because it is an honest, sincere effort to direct again and to give WHO the breathing space from US pressure to look into all these other instances. So I think that is my, unless I have other visuals that I have not looked at or shown. Wala na, no? Okay, so back to you, Wilson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ka Mentong Laurel, for your very comprehensive, eye-opening presentation, all these facts. Before we go to the third speaker for his opening statement, I'd like to mention again that last night before I went to sleep, I discovered a new article from Boston Globe newspaper by Stephen Kinzer of Brown University, dated July 30. The title is America Has Its Own Virus Secrets. This is in Boston Globe. So I encourage everyone. That article sums up a lot of what you just said, Mr. Mentong Laurel. Actually, I want to tell you honestly, I thought it was science fiction. It was too good to be true, all this data. But reading this article and others confirm a lot of what you said, Mr. Mentong Laurel and Paglinawan. I'd like to introduce the third speaker for his short opening statement. He is a multi-talented intellectual, a physician and a lawyer, Dr. Attorney Leomil Aportadera. His full name is Mario Leonardo Emilio Aportadera. He is an award-winning professor at University of San Agustin in Iloilo City. Remarkably, unlike other people, most people teach only one field of knowledge. This professor Aportadera teaches BS Biology, among other things. As a lawyer, he teaches also international law, political theories, and other legal subjects. He has a degree in BS Biology from University of San Agustin, Iloilo City, graduated summa cum laude like a gold medalist in the Olympic Games. And not only that, he has always been an eloquent writer, editor-in-chief of the Augustinian Mirror magazine. He took up medicine from University of Santo Tomas, where he was very interestingly awarded Tomasian Poet of the Year by the UST Literary Awards in 1986. Plus many other credentials that we don't have time to enumerate. So we'd like to invite Dr. Lemuel, Dr. Attorney and Dr. Leomil Aportadera for his opening statement. Renaissance man, we have a very interesting intellectual. Dr. Leomil Aportadera. for
Doctor, your
opening statement.
audio.
Paki-unmute. We have to unmute Dr. Aportadera. He is still muted. Please unmute yourself or...
Okay,
Ayun.
I'm in.
Okay,
Yes.
good.
Welcome
I'm
to
in.
the remarkably multi-talented Leomil Aportadera.
I do the wrong and first begin to brawl. The secret mischiefs that I set abroad, I lay unto the grievous charge to others. William Shakespeare wrote that in Lyon and Richard III. For the record, good morning to everyone. For the record, I have signed the petition and allowed my name to be posted with my signature in the petition, and I have joined as of last night more than 20 million signatories throughout the world asking for the probe of Fort Detrick. To be honest, I have not heard of Fort Detrick before reading the petition. But when I started to do my research, this is a Pandora's box, no? An opening to a can of every a can of worst case scenarios health-wise to all the world. This petition, if you would notice, is a petition. The WHO may not act upon it, but this petition is born out of the reality which we have to connect to the 1972 Biological Weapons Convention, which was signed in 1972 and came into force in 1975 with the Philippines, China, United States as among the signatories. The two main problems of this Biological Weapons Convention are that there are insufficient institutional support among state signatories, and number two, the absence of any formal verification to monitor compliance. So if you would notice, unlike in the Nuclear Proliferation Convention, there are some UN accredited bodies who would do the monitoring of the compliance. In this case, the member signatory states are left whether they to comply or not. In this slide, we have to introduce to the public several terms, one of which was, I think, sent as a message. Can you enlighten us about this gain of function term? This gain of function term is referred to research which could enable pandemic potential pathogen to replicate more quickly or cause more harm in humans or other closely related mammals. In fact, if you read about the Wikipedia entry of Fort Detrick, it showed that these facilities has what we called around 69 select agents, of which one is the coronavirus. Now we go to the second term. What is that? What is known as the select agents? Actually, the select agents is given as a select agent term was given by the U.S. government, and it is described as biological agents and toxins that have been determined to have potential to pose severe threat to both human and animal life, to plant health, or to plant and plant products. Among these 67 select agents found in Fort Detrick is SARS-associated coronavirus or SARS-CoV. So which brings us to the petition that the focus, as Kamentong mentioned, we should widen the search net of the source of this pandemic. In line with those two earliest frame, select agents and the gain of function, we have what we call the dual use research of concern as defined by the WHO. It is described as research that is intended to provide a clear benefit, but which could easily be misapplied to do harm. It usually refers to work in the life sciences, but principles are also applicable to other fields, including engineering and informational technology. It encompasses everything from information to specific products that have potential to create negative consequences for health and disease and safety, agriculture, the environment, or national security. Lest we become so alarmist, one good thing about this dual use is about GPS. Though it may be used for military purposes, it has been widely used for peaceful commercial purposes also. So, in connection as a reaction to what Kamentong mentioned as to widen the net, 18 scientists led by Dr. Jesse Bloom published a letter in the Science on May 14, 2021. That was just recently. Jesse Bloom is a viral evolutionary geneticist. They wrote, Jesse Bloom and 17 other scientists wrote that for greater clarity about the origins of this pandemic, it is necessary and feasible to achieve. We must take past hypotheses about both natural and laboratory spillovers seriously until we have sufficient data. A proper investigation should be transparent, objective, no place for racism, no place for politicization, data-driven, inclusive of broad expertise, subject to independent oversight, and responsibly managed to minimize the impact of conflicts of interest. Public health agencies and research laboratories alike should open their records to the public. Again, public health agencies and research laboratories alike need to open their records to the public. It is an encompassing term. This does not refer only to Wuhan Institute of Virology. So Fort Detrick came into the picture. Kamentong mentioned that incident prior to December 2020, that it was closed. In fact, that closure of that Fort District was a consequence of an earlier incident in 2018, which resulted in a flooding of the facilities and the contamination of the sewage and drainage area. So more or less, that sums up my reaction to the book launching and the petition to prove Fort Detrick.
Thank you very much for your opening statement, Dr. and Attorney Leomil Aportadera. That's one person, two personas, outstanding lawyer, medical doctor, and also a professor. Thank you very much. We'd like to open the floor for questions. Any one of you who would like to raise questions? The first question, I got a text here. How could people support or sign up to your petition? Where is your petition? Sorry for people who are not techies. Some people texted here, they are not technically experts. Where do they log on? What is the platform? Was this petition initiated by the three of you, or is it from abroad? Can you summarize it? Like, what is the petition about? Where could people log on? Is it Facebook? Is it how do they do it now? Somebody is asking here.
Yes, let us, well, I'm not a techie also, so I
Yes.
rely on our technical man, Joshua, I think, Joshua, what's the best way of informing our audience on how to first to log in? I think to log in on Facebook, just search for GTNR, GTNR, four letters. Yeah, go ahead, Joshua. Please give the instructions.
So, yes. Can you share the link? Thank you, Joshua. Can the link? Yes.
Okay,
There's a
yeah,
question.
is that sufficient? Can we make it even more convenient? Can we
Yes,
send
yung parang they will just click sana.
because that's right.
Yes.
So you can read out your number or maybe Anna's number.
Can you repeat again? Yes. Pakiulit, 0956 431 3643. Yes. Yes. Thank you very much, Joshua, for the technical support. There's a message here from Davao City from Mr. Peter Lavinia. Sabi niya, for the info of the panelists, speakers, the Philippine-China Mutual Cooperation Society, Inc., I think this is based in Davao, has signed the global call for the impartial science-based origin tracing and investigation of Fort Detrick and other biolabs in the U.S. This is signed by its president. Yes.
There's a
Based in
question.
Sishi, Fujian. Yes, there's a question.
There's
Yes.
a question here from Michael Alunan. If we can provide
Yes.
the presentation. Yes, we will provide it. I know how to get in touch with Michael Alunan. The others who are interested, again, try to look for our websites. We will post it there. And we will add materials. Actually, we were not able to include a ton of materials. We will put it together for everybody's reference. There is also a question I read here about a comment from an expert, also a virologist. What's her name? About the gain of function, which was explained comprehensively by Dr. Liomil, and international lawyer, by the way, Aportadera. But I can't find the question right now. There are many views about this virus, well, that's precisely, I think, our point, to expand the discussion, to expand the investigation, so we have a thorough and comprehensive understanding. Let me see first.
Thank you. There's a question here, Mr. Laurel and
Yes.
Dr. Aportadera and Kaado. There's a question here. They saw the news, international news, about the Dr. Fauci arguing with a senator in the U.S., angrily saying this is not true, that they're spreading the fiction that it came from Wuhan, the lab, and all that. Why are some politicians in the West still mouthing this line when even Dr. Fauci, the most famous infectious disease expert in America, saying that it could not possibly come out of a lab in Wuhan? Why do you think some politicians are still trying to spread this fiction? Can comment on Laurel or Dr. Yomil Aportadera give your opinions?
Please.
From the limited knowledge that I learned about that exchange between Dr. Fauci and Senator Paul Rand, it was
Yes.
about the 2014 post. There was a post in funding for certain biological research over the issue of the Asian flu virus, the H5N1 virus. So
Yes.
because of the work of sorry. I just want to have my facts right. Okay. Yes, the exchange came out over a 3-year moratorium on research issued by the National Institute of Health. When there was a moratorium, it would mean there was a halt in funding. So for 3 years, there was a halt in funding over the issues of a work of a certain Dr. Yoshihiro Kawaka, a doctor of veterinary medicine based in the University of Wisconsin in Madison. It was his work where he allowed the mutation of the H5N1 avian flu to become more transmissible, including to human. Because of the potential threat of a pandemic over this discovery, there was a need that funding was stopped and a moratorium which was eventually lifted in 2017. That was why it was called the 2014 pause, a pause or a stop in the funding by the NIH on research of on select agents or virus or bacteria that are capable of being transmuted into pandemic threats. Eventually, it was lifted in 2017. The exchange was that Senator Paul Rand was accusing Fauci that the funding that the US government was in fact funding the Wuhan Institute of Virology, when in fact the funding from the US government was coursed through the Eco Health Alliance, which was previously called Wildlife Conservation, and although only part of the funding was given, the remaining amount of the fund was stopped with the 2014 pause. So the Washington Post did some fact-finding about that, and there was some misrepresentation in the accusation of Senator Paul Rand against Fauci, because, of course, the U.S. state government did not directly funded the research, and eventually it led to the controversy about that Wuhan Institute of Virology. So I hope, just to clarify over that exchange between Dr. Fauci and a senator, while trying to politicize the issue and bring China into the picture, when in fact the question about the 2014 pause was about the study conducted in the University of Wisconsin in Madison.
That's right. Yeah,
Thank you
and,
very much, Dr. Aportadera, for your opinion.
there's a question here.
Miss Ana Malindog Uy also messaged a question from Facebook, almost related to that question earlier. Sabi niya, some people are asking, why is the USA trying to pinpoint that COVID-19 fault created now supposedly by China? What's the stake of the US in doing this? This was messaged by a friend of Miss Ana Malindog Uy, another analyst. Yes, Mr. Laurel.
I think Ado was raising his hand, so let's give way to Ado.
Yes, at ka Ado.
Nakamute ata si Ado.
Paglinawan.
Okay. Na-unmute na ba?
Is it possible that the title of the book of Ado is one of the reasons? Is inherent racism by some Western politicians behind this? Ado is back.
I think we can hear Ado already.
Yes, Mr. Ado Paglinawan.
Timeline that Dr. Aportadera is mentioning.
Paki-adjust yung volume.
Can we have it louder?
Yes, we want your voice louder sana, Ado.
Hold on.
The volume.
Hear me?
Okay, louder.
Yes.
Hold on. Anyway, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
We could hear you naman. We could hear you, Doc.
All right. The timeline that Dr. Aportadera was mentioning was the time when there was government going into the picture of a proliferation of biolabs around the United States. And many were being caught not observing the protocol for safety. And so there was a move to close many of these biolabs and a suggestion to enable, especially those involving with animal to human transmission, to locate outside of the United States. And with the NIH and the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, which is headed by Dr. Fauci, to fund this. And what Dr. Aportadera was saying was the funding came from the government basically onto a intermediary, and they were surprised that 3.7, to be specific, 3.7 million of this money in dollars have been allocated for the Wuhan lab in China. Because the Wuhan lab in China has, in medical circles, was prominent for bat-related research. Now, let us define what is gain-of-function research here, which is improving the ability of a pathogen to cause disease. That is basically what the research is for. And so it's very dangerous for this researching to be going haywire within the United States. So they plan to outsource it to other countries. And one of those countries was Wuhan, China. So that relates it. And so they were making Dr. Fauci a scapegoat, and they were asking him why this money had landed in Wuhan, because the senators were still of the mindset that the COVID-19 came from Wuhan, China, the laboratory itself. But reports have already been made public, not only by the press, but by the World Health Organization itself, as mentioned by Commenton, that the high improbability of a laboratory leak occurred in China, and to make it even more preposterous for this mindset to be scattering around is the fact that even when COVID was already a pandemic, there was no reported infection of any Wuhan specialist or practitioner on record. And so this is big BS. No infection within the Wuhan laboratory. How can there be a transmission from the Wuhan laboratory? So I would go back to the closest possible cause of Wuhan being infected in great numbers by the onslaught of over 300 American servicemen who carried the virus to China. That is a very strong statement, but that is what the smoking gun presents, because those servicemen getting sick in China could not have gotten it in Wuhan because of the incubation period of the virus, which is 10 to 14 days. They already had the virus when they went inside the Chinese borders. That is smoking gun because of the timeline. That is why the timeline here is very important. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ado Paglinawan, the book author and analyst, and also former diplomat.
I will
There's a
add,
question here. Mentong,
By the
there's a
way,
question here from former Philippine diplomat, retired Ambassador Alberto Encomienda. He suggested that countries with biolabs should have these biolabs regulated by the United Nations. Like, for example, he said USA has over 200 biolabs all over the world. What are your opinions on this suggestion by Ambassador Alberto Encomienda? Will the petition that you are advocating call for this also? Can the three speakers comment on this?
I think that's a splendid suggestion, and we will after consulting with Ado and the others, after consulting,
Include that?
we will include it if approved. I assume everybody would agree. It's a very outstanding idea.
Yes.
Which
Thank you very
reminds me,
much.
by the way, which
Yes.
reminds me, Wilson and everybody else.
Yes.
I reviewed the record of the United States about these international agreements and monitoring. And before the session started, I reviewed the weapons of mass destruction investigation by the International Agency, Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA. I remember in 2003, when the IAEA already concluded that there was no weapons of mass destruction, the U.S. still insisted on attacking Iraq. But that is the attitude of the U.S. With regards to all these international protocols and agreements. Still, Ambassador Encomienda's suggestion should be put forward, and we'll also push it.
Thank you very much, Mentong Laurel. That's a comment here from Dr. Joel Duque. He said, it is difficult to implement UN supervision of all biolabs since the major powers have veto powers in the Security Council. That is just the information. Thank you from Dr. Joel Duque. Sabi ni Ms. Ana Malindog, there are several questions here for Ado Paglinawan. How do we buy a copy of your book? Who do we contact? Where do we go? Because bookstores are not very open, I think, in this lockdown. And where do we buy your new book?
Of course, I think all participants here should have.
Yes, all the media guests will be given a free autograph copy. Ado. But can you message your contacts, email or something sa chat box so people could buy books from you?
I'll do that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Ado Paglinawan. There's a comment here, a question here from Miss Patricia Ilagan. Could this be intentional for the USA to sacrifice the lives of some military just to carry the narrative or lie that the coronavirus started in Wuhan? Anybody wants to comment on the
in
question?
fact, that is a theory that is not spoken of, but there are many who suspect that. And why Wuhan? Wuhan has a population of 15 million. Half of the population of Wuhan come from other provinces. And so it was a perfect target for spreading a virus. Because during the Spring Festival, half of the population of Wuhan spreads out all over China. And so that is one of the suspicions. But since all these, what they call conspiracy theories are no-no, it's not very much spoken about. But it is in the minds of many analysts because it was a really good target to, if this was the case, to target Wuhan. But to prove it, we have to have more and more information. And again, to answer another question that came up earlier, this may be the reason why the U.S. is trying to distract. Again, weapons of mass destruction, not destruction, but distraction, to distract away from its possible, we're not making any conclusions, from its possible role in this pandemic. The U.S. is trying to just keep it on China. But again, another speculation is this is not done with the authority of the government of the United States, but some of the parts of the deep state of the United States may have intentionally done this because, as the Times of Israel shows, the U.S. intelligence community knew already that there was a virus spreading. Did they know
Before
it? Because they
China knew it.
before December of 2019, they informed Israel. I think I showed the report, and they informed the Israel and NATO countries in November of 2019 that there was a outbreak already in Wuhan, China, which was discovered only in December. So how did they know? Because some of them may have known that the team of the US going to the Wuhan military games were already infected but kept quiet about it. So again, we are not saying this is conclusive. This is one of the theories.
Thank you very much, Ka Mentong Laurel. There's a question here from Tin of Today Online. Her question for Ka Mentong Laurel. If this is about the Great Reset, do we see this unfolding successfully based on their plans? But of course, without resistance, could this lead to another war? This is a question of Tin of Today Online.
Well, there are many other theories about why this is happening, and if it was intentionally done, why it is being done. One, of course, is that the U.S. cannot repay all its debt to all the other countries anymore. That I think is established. Nobody expects the U.S. to pay the debt. To China alone, it's 1.1 trillion. To Japan, it's 1.2 trillion. To Taiwan, it's almost over at $500 billion, and so on and so forth, and all the rest of the world. So this is one way of escaping.
Thank you.
the debt.
Dr.
If they
Joel
can blame-
Duque, can you comment on statements by whistleblower? Yes. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. The question from Dr. Joel Duque. Can you please comment on statements by whistleblower Dr. Judy Mikovits, researcher, virologist, about the gain-of-function studies on viruses at Fort Detrick lab, and this lab, the possible source of SARS-CoV-2, she has been widely discredited for it. Your comments on Dr. Judy Mikovits.
Yeah.
A question from Dr. Joel Duque. Thank you very
Yeah.
much.
In fact, I wrote about Mikovits as early as March or April 2020, because Ado and I were already writing about these questions at that time. Of course, Mikovits, Dr. Mikovits was discredited because she was taken out of one of the research projects for some reasons I cannot recall immediately. And one of her controversial statements is that masks are useless in this pandemic. It's unhealthy to wear masks and so on. So based on those, there's a lot of discredit that came to her. But the gain of function has two sides to it. As Dr. Aportadera has explained, it can be used for good, which is to study the effects of transmission from animal to human and so on and so forth, in order to find or anticipate solutions to it, such as vaccines and so on. But of course, it can also be used for biowarfare. So I think we need a global authority to manage all this, as mentioned by Ambassador Encomienda, to manage all these experiments, which can do both good and harm to mankind.
Thank you, Mr. Mentong Laurel. I'd like to acknowledge one of the attendees, our guest attending. She's former Health Secretary, Dr. Janet Garid. I think she's one of the best health secretaries listening to us in this forum now. There's another question here from Ms. Alma Llanrena. Why just now all these things are being being alleged or being discussed by the Western politicians? What's the point of this timing? What are they trying to do?
Yeah, let's give it to Dr. Aportadera
Yes.
or Ado Paglinawan muna. Dr.
Dr.
Aportadera.
Leomil Aportadera or Ka-Ado Paglinawan? Why amidst this global crisis, they are trying to create this issue that's a little bit bizarre?
Yeah, well, let me put it this way. President Trump politicized it. It was not supposed to be politicized. Everybody's response for COVID-19 should be scientific, medical, technical. But some people are trying to politicize it. Trump, during the presidential campaign of November
Yes.
21,
Scapegoating.
during that time, President Biden was on the opposite side of the picture. When President Trump heard that $3.7 million have been allotted for Wuhan virus, in fairness, he immediately acted and found out that 600,000 of it had already been spent. But he stopped the rest at 3.1, the allocations. When President Biden took office, there were two things that he did. The first was to tell people to put a stop to calling this virus Chinese or Wuhan virus. Of course, later on, he would change his mind. The second thing is he restored the funding for the Wuhan virus. So there is something going on here behind the scenes that we may perhaps will never know. But the timing here is just people are trying to look for the truth. And that's why these questions are coming out just now. If you know, I came out with my book in September 2020. September, October, November, December, January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August. It's almost 1 year from the time I came up with my book. And everything in this book, all right, cannot be negated or contradicted by President Biden's order to the intelligence community to look again into the Wuhan or in any whatever that would put China into the picture. So again, President Biden is politicizing this. It is part of the American mindset to do this because China is perceived to be an enemy. What am I talking about here? The source of overt intelligence, ladies and gentlemen, are the newspapers that publishes. And intelligence per se, only 10% can be derived from the James Bond, Tom Cruise type of Mission Impossible undercover operations for fact-finding with the FBI and everybody else, NSA, CIA, whatever. Only 10%. Why? Because 90% of intelligence is covert. They are precisely in newspapers published every day. They have deadlines. They have datelines. They are archived. And so they can never counter any of the reports of newspapers that I collated in this collection. So what are they doing now? I hope they stop politicizing this issue and getting into the bigger agenda of finding a cure once and for all for COVID-19. Because the emphasis so far has been on vaccine. People earn money. All right, many companies earn money. The emphasis should be on the cure. Has anybody found a cure for COVID-19? But many vaccines are already out. You see? So there are so many motivations behind the scenes going on here. Political, business, commercial, whatever.
Oh,
And we
if I
should
may,
stop talking about it in that manner, because confrontation will only lead to conflict, and conflict to violent war.
okay.
We do not
So
want
Thank
any
you
of
very much.
I just want to
Thank you, Ado.
refocus on the main theme, and that is again is do a widespread and comprehensive investigation to find the truth. One important point is Kaado also reminded everybody that Biden on January 27 banned the use of the term China virus or Wuhan virus or Kung flu and so on any official documents of the American institutions or government and so on. But he around I think March, April, sometime May, he changed his mind based on alleged report that from his intelligence officers or agencies that 3 Wuhan Institute of Virology personnel got sick. Up to now, there are no names. And in fact, Australian virology expert Danielle Anderson, who worked in the Wuhan Institute of Laboratory until early December, said that nobody got sick. Contrast this to the still pending names that the FBI has not revealed. And so it is apparent that Biden has just been, his leg has been pulled by his intelligence people, or at the same time, Biden still finds the distraction with the China virus useful for his political circumstances. Si Kado is raising his hand.
Commenton. What about the names of the 54 patients who were hospitalized in Fairfax in June 30, 2019? The Fairfax County hospital system made an investigation on this. Where are the findings? What about the findings on the 300 servicemen, those people who got sick in Wuhan?
Yeah.
Definitely, there is an investigation that went through that. Where are the findings? We have to be transparent. Every nation has to be transparent.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank
let's get
you.
back to Wilson.
There's
Wilson,
a-
we have 3 minutes
yes.
before the
Yes.
appointed end time.
Yes, there's attendee here, Mr. Joaquin Co said he supports your petition for WHO to start investigating the closing incident of Fort Detrick. He wants to remind everyone also that this Fort Detrick biolab seems like an extension of the 731 lab of the Japanese military during World War II, which used live human bodies of their Chinese victims for tests in bioweapons and virus. It's a moral sin laboratory with war crimes. And Mr. Napoleon Ko of Cebu also expresses support for your petition. And he comments that maybe some US politicians are doing this because they want to try to extort money from China by asking them for money, like reparations, so-called, and all that. Thank you to all the comments. You could sign in with our panelists, their petition. What will be your next step? The 3 speakers, the petition, what is the stage of the petition? Do you plan to publish more articles about your talks during this lockdown and all this? What are your plans? How can people support you? The 3 of you. People are asking.
One is of course sign up to the petition and ask your family, co-workers to sign up too. Explain the issues. This is too important not to be spreading the information to our people. Number 2, it is also in the petition that we will be linking up with ASEAN countries and ASEAN NGOs and think tanks to also launch their own petitions to the WHO. The information campaign will go on. As Peter Q. Lavinia said in his comment here, we have been from day one explaining these issues, but fake news, control of media has prevented this information from going out. That is why we're very happy. We have almost 50 concerned people joining us today, and we will have more sessions and discussions on this. Just to answer also, Tin, yes, they will not succeed. The Great Reset will not succeed because there are countries like Russia, China, Cuba, and others who are trying to produce the vaccines necessary without profit for the world. And of course, there are people like you and us here together. We will inform the world about the truth. There are already, as of now, 22 million signatures to the WHO petition, not ours, but others, 22 million, and this will continue to grow definitely. Another highlighted question here, Paglinawan book sale. To those who were present in the Zoom, you can avail of the book at a price of 450 free courier delivery within the Philippines. This book is not available in bookstores because it is self-published. Send
Yes.
450 to Adolfo Paglinawan, 0917-336-4366 via Cebuano or Palawan. Okay, and then you can text your tracking number, your name, address, and cell phone number. Okay, and we appreciate also, it's self-published by ADO, but there were assistance from other sources to ADO. We will not mention their names, but we express appreciation to them also.
There's a question here, Mr.
Yeah.
Mentong Laurel. Sorry, there's a question here. What are your reactions to Secretary Harry Roque saying origin tracing of COVID-19 should not be politicized? It is vital, but it should not be politicized. I think the Philippines has joined many countries in the world. What are your reactions to this, to the three speakers? Secretary Roque said it is vital to study the origins, but should not politicize it.
I think as of last count, there are around 42 or 45 countries that have signed a petition to WHO with 100 signatures from representatives of these countries to WHO to end the politicization, to stop the politicization of this virus tracing, origin tracing project. I think the Philippine government is echoing the sentiment of many countries to do a scientific, comprehensive, and objective investigation in order to find better solutions for this global challenge that we face. Wilson?
Thank you very much. What about Dr. Aportadera? Maybe he'd like to react to this, to the statement of Secretary Harry Roque. Now, it's vital to study it, but should not politicize the issue.
Official WHO records would show that the COVID-19 virus did not originate from China. The exact word was, the first documented case was in Wuhan, China. There was never a mention of its origin. So bringing it to public discussion is one way, one step to fight all these false truths, to politicize the matter. In fact, as we have gleaned over this discussion, this so-called politicization of the matter is also a factor in the racism, in the racist tone of the pandemic. In this light, I want to quote on that May 14, 2021 letter of Dr. Jesse Bloom and 17 other scientists. They wrote, and I quote, "We know at the beginning of the pandemic, it was Chinese doctors, scientists, journalists, and citizens who shared to the world crucial information about the spread of the virus, often at the great personal cost." End of quote. We all know what happened to virologist Shi Xingdi of the Wuhan Institute of Virology, who was personally scorned over the internet as a Batwoman for her pioneering research in bat and the connection with COVID and coronavirus. Now, politicizing this is a step, is a matter, is a subtle way of making it as a racist twist to the pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There's another question here related to all this. Somebody said, is the false accusations against China, the defamation using this so-called origin, is this a repeat of what they did to Spain in 1918 by unfairly calling the pandemic of 1918 as Spanish flu, Spanish influenza, when it originally came out now from Kansas in the military camp or something? Can any of the three of you elucidate or explain a little bit of this? Do you remember 1918? The last pandemic, it was wrongly named as Spanish flu, but it did not start in Spain. It started in Kansas now. Can anyone add anything to this? Is this also similar?
Doctor.
Yes, Dr. Aportadera.
It was precisely this reason why the WHO is not in favor of naming a particular pandemic after a particular place, whether rightfully or not. If you know what happened, in 1918, Spain was a neutral country, and as a neutral country, it was the only country among the belligerent countries in Europe that had no press censorship. So they were reporting the matter of this new kind of flu, wherein very able, very physically strong young men and women would immediately die after exhibiting symptoms of flu. So it became associated as a Spanish flu when in fact it started in Kansas, and it started in Kansas. It was never called Kansas flu.
It was another military camp also, I think, no, Doctor? Started somewhere among the soldiers in Kansas.
Yes. But because most of the flu cases then in 1918 were reported out of Spain, it was mistakenly and now commonly referred to as the Spanish flu pandemic of 1918.
Which is very unfair to Spanish people and to Spain. Thank you. Yes.
One way to overcome this unfair reporting is to come out with the truth. And I think most people know that it was because of this and it was not in Spain that it originated.
Thank you very much, Dr. Aportadera. For those who were not yet born there, like me, that was the last pandemic of the world, 1918. So this is like part 2. Yes. Ado Paglinawan, yes, the book author.
Yeah, it's in chapter 5 of my book.
It's in chapter 5 of your book. Oh, we are more eager to buy your book now. Thank you very much. Chapter 5. You cited that.
History repeating itself.
Yes. Thank you very much for reminding us. So, if we don't spread the truth, history will repeat itself tragically. Thank you very much to Dr. Ado Paglinawan again. We are here in a very simple media forum one day before the lockdown, very auspicious, and launching the book via Zoom. The book by Ado Paglinawan. Don't forget to buy a copy and give it to other people. So maybe we have room for time for 1 or 2 more last questions. We'll ask. I'll check. There are many texts here. For the other questions that we could not address, we will send it to Mr. Ado and to Herman Laurel and to Dr. Aportadera. Thank you to all the media friends who attended. And we will send you free books. Please kindly message me, text me your addresses. We will send the book. Plus gift from our 3 panelists. From me also, we have pandesal and cookies from Kamuning Bakery. Any more questions you'd like to have? Maybe 1 or 2 last questions. If not, kasi we could not accommodate many questions, can we invite the 3 speakers to briefly shortly give us your closing statements. Let us start with Mr. Ado Paglinawan. First of all, I want to congratulate the three speakers today. They are to be awarded soon with the award for promoting Philippines-China Understanding, or APTCU up to, with many distinguished, 10 of them distinguished awardees. So we'd like to invite Mr. Ado Paglinawan for your closing statement.
Well, thank you very much for all of you who attended this Zoom session. The book was precisely one of the reasons, I believe, why I got an award. It's really to open borders, to open mindsets, and take out this scourge that people are attaching a specific virus to a specific nationality. That is anathema. Those who want to politicize this can do it in their own time. But we appeal to all of you who know, and especially you who have been affected by COVID-19, to take this up with your families, because it's very important, especially for us Filipinos and Asians. Alam po ba ninyo na dahil sa politicization of the virus as coming from China, marami na sa mga kababayan natin ang nabubugbog, ang nasusuntok, ang naaabuso sa Estados Unidos, because the racism is not being attached only to the Chinese, but to the Asians. This is very dangerous, especially in the midst of a pandemic where almost everybody is in a state of panic about how to cope, not just with the disease, but with their livelihood and the future of their children and their grandchildren. So this is epochal insofar as I'm concerned, and let us sign this petition because it is for humanity, the whole of humanity, and not just for our country, not just for China, not just for the United States, but for the entire humanity that has been suffering because of COVID-19. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ado Paglinawan, especially for your reminder about hate crimes all across the North America. Many Filipinos have been victims of that, especially that Filipina immigrant in New York, beaten up by an American wrongly because of this racism created by this fake news. Thank you very much, Ado Paglinawan, and congratulations for your new book. Next to give his closing statement would be Camentong Laurel. And Mr. Camentong Laurel, maybe you could also give us your contact for the Field Bricks think tank, who would like to, if people would like to support you or give suggestions, how do they contact Field Bricks Strategic Studies?
Yeah.
Camentong Laurel.
I have to refer to our techie, Josh. Now, let me see. For
So
media,
please message the chat box,
others,
your email address.
yeah, please contact Global Talk News Radio. So it's easy to remember, one straight line, Global Talk News Radio at gmail.com, or text at 0956-431-3643. 09,
Yes.
0956-431-3643. And my message
To contact
is,
Field Bricks Strategic Studies.
yeah, to
Your
contact
closing
us.
statement, Mentong Laurel.
Well, this is just the beginning, and we're very happy that we have many participants who are very concerned about this. Always since my childhood, what rings in my mind and in my heart has been peace on earth, goodwill to men, and truth shall set you free, and truth shall set us free. I think the world is on the verge of a great change towards the end of all wars and towards a global community of peace and prosperity. And this is one of the challenges we need to overcome. This pandemic. There are other challenges to overcome, and we must all work together globally to ensure a continuing safe and prosperous future for mankind.
Thank you. Sabi ni Mr. Ado Paglinawan, yung field BRICS daw, BRICS meaning BRICS meaning Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. These are the core original members of BRICS. There's a question before we go to the closing statement of Dr. Aportadera. Mr. Mentong Laurel, is the Philippines a possible member or even guest attendee of BRICS? Do you suggest that? Would you recommend that to our president since we have an independent foreign policy
Thank you
of
for bringing up.
befriending all powers?
Thank you for bringing up the matter of BRICS: Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. It is constantly expanding, and we set it as an ideal for a multipolar world, multilateralism for countries to get together and work together. It's open now to Pakistan, to Indonesia, who have observer status. The Philippines has not yet requested for an observer status, which we should. So the BRICS name will eventually change to a new name because it will not be able to incorporate all the countries that will be joining it. So that is our hope, a global community finally for all of mankind.
Maybe your research institute could advocate Philippines to apply to be an observer status. Thank you.
Yes, that's a splendid suggestion too. We will do so.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mentong Laurel. Radio host also and TV host. Last but not the least, we have the multi-talented doctor and attorney and also poet, Attorney Leomil Aportadera for his closing statement. He is based in Iloilo.
Hello. Our discussion today is our small step, our small contribution to bringing this matter into the marketplace of idea. In whatever discussion of ideas, so far, so long as truth is on your side, we shall prevail. In this matter, it will still be a long way to go on the matter of what was the true story, what is the true story of this pandemic. But for the meantime, we are tasked we are facing with the task at hand, that is to stay safe and follow our health protocols. So let us be safe and follow our government guidelines and comply with them so that we will keep ourselves safe and those in our families safe from the virus. Thank you.
Thank you very much again, Dr. and Attorney Leomil Aportadera. Once again, we'd like to thank the three speakers for this interesting media forum. This is not the last. This is the first on this topic. And thank you very much for all your information, all your ideas. Your information, your ideas are vaccines against fake news. So we should spread the vaccines of truth, the vaccines of information against the pandemic of fake news, lies, and racism spreading worldwide through social media and media. What these three gentlemen have done here is to start an information campaign in the Philippines. Thank you again to Mr. Ado Paglinawan by his book. Also, Ka Mentong Laurel, communicate with him, share your ideas and your info. Volunteer to work with his field BRICS strategic research studies, and also Dr. Attorney Leomil Aportadera in Iloilo City. Once again, thank you very much, and we will send you our humble gifts of pandesal and cookies, plus the book of Ado Paglinawan to all our media friends. Non-media friends could buy the book discounted rate. Once again, thank you very much and enjoy your lunch. And please take care of your health We have only 2 weeks of lockdown starting tomorrow. Let's make it work. Let's cooperate so that we will have the good bare months of September to December to recover and rebuild our economy. Thank you to everyone, and help share the vaccines of truth and information against the pandemic of fake news. Thank you to everyone. By the way, yung Kamuning Bakery is always open during the lockdown. So if you want to chat, I will be there, and we have coffee and breads. Thank you to everyone. Thank you to the very, very eloquent speakers. Ang ganda ng view mo dyan, Mr. Ado Paglinawan in Subic. We envy you for being outside Metro Manila now. Ang ganda ng dyan view. And Mr. Herman Laurel, thank you for all your fearless views. And Dr. Leomil Aportadera, it's an honor to meet you. I have read and heard a lot about you and your brilliant mind and your fearless views. Please message me your contact numbers also, Dr. Leomil Aportadera. And thank you to all our media friends for joining, for all your questions. If we could not accommodate all your questions, rest assured the 3 speakers will get all your questions. Thank you very much. Good afternoon to everyone.
Okay, Josh, do we end this?
Thank you, and have a good lunch.